This episode is brought to you by Bent Pixels, the premier technology provider for the world's leading video networks and next-generation media companies. The Bent Pixels platform provides back-office network administration tools to facilitate partner onboarding, network intelligence, and payments. The company also provides digital rights management solutions for content claiming and anti-piracy on YouTube. There's a reason 4 of the top 5 MCNs and dozens more across 5 continents trust Bent Pixels. You're listening to All Things Video, where we uncover the past and chart the future of the online video ecosystem. I'm your host, James Creech, and today we're joined by Ben Lister, COO USA of Rightster. Ben is actually the first person I met in the MCN world when I started at Bent Pixels. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and he was kind enough to share his perspectives on the space over coffee when I was a mere week into the job. Since then, he's become a trusted industry contact and a good friend. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever actually told you that story that, I was fresh into the one crazy wide world of MCNs when we first met.
I remember when we first met. It was in Venice.
That's right.
We had a coffee. I was already very impressed with what Bent Pixels were doing. Yeah, it's been great to be in touch ever since.
Well, thank you. That's nice of you. So you began your career in the traditional entertainment world, working for Warner Music, Viacom, and the UK broadcaster Channel 4.
That's right.
How did you make that transition from traditional into digital?
Well, all throughout my career, I've worked in the digital functions within those businesses. So I was at university actually doing a kind of hybrid music and business degree. At the time, everyone was going crazy about the MP3 revolution. The download was going to kill the CD and all that stuff. And I was fortunate enough to end up in the music business at Warner Music. And I was the first digital employee there in the UK. So we worked very closely with people at Apple on the launch of iTunes. Actually, that didn't come till 3 years later. And a wealth of other products and services across, online streaming, which obviously came a lot later. Mobile products were the kind of interim revenue generator. So I'd always navigated my way throughout those large media corporations in digital. And at Channel 4, I had a great experience. We worked on a number of projects there that were maybe a little bit more traditional in a sense. For example, I was working on a virtual mobile network operator deal at the time, but it also had a music component to it with Universal Music adding some music. And at that point, I worked on the YouTube deal at Channel 4. And there was part of the team there that did that. Very non-traditional broadcaster, almost experiment probably for Google. And it was a really refreshing experience. And at the time, I was approached by a recruiter. It's the first time I've ever been approached by a headhunter that actually turned into a job, I'm pleased to say. And I've been there ever since. And I joined the team at Base 79. I was the 6th, employee at the time, in a very small room in Waterloo in central London. And these guys had a fantastic opportunity. They had a deal to be able to sell the advertising on YouTube on behalf of their partners. And they hired me to run business development and to acquire those partners and to help sort of maybe think about further distribution based on the experience that I had. So, that was my sort of first move into startup and my first sort of pure digital play, if you like. And
that's a big leap.
There's been no.
How did you know when you were ready for that?
Do you know, I was probably 10 years into my career. And I thought, I've had a great experience working in these actually large American, for the most part, organizations in running, various parts of international in London. I loved the sort of well-lit environment, the perks, all the wonderful things you get as being part of the industry. I just woke up one day and thought, I need a challenge. It's not a big company. And I'd love to be, have some real skin in the game and be part of something smaller that has a chance to grow. And yes, that's exactly what's happened. Base 79 has gone from...
You're batting 1,000.
Well, this is it. So what was I, employee number 6? And then I think we were 60 by the time we sold the business, and now we're a little over 220 or something. So it's definitely grown a lot in that time, and it's been a real fantastic learning curve.
Great. It seems like a number of other people go through a similar transition or seek to do so. They come into some sort of calculus where they've worked in larger organizations for a while and want to make the move into a startup. Do you have any advice or recommendations for them?
Well, I would say this is not necessarily what I did, but looking back on it, I should have probably done this a little bit more. In those big company environments, you've got this wonderful opportunity to learn lots of different skills that maybe one day you will apply in either your own business or in a small business that you're part of a team. So, I was fortunate in the sense that being in digital, you were across marketing, you were across, press and publicity and promotion, you're in the commercial zone. You're sometimes also in the creative zone as well, which obviously in record labels and TV, I was able to work with A&R guys and commissioners. And I think you just got to try and invest your own time in those businesses to get the skills that will pay you dividends in the future in your next career moves. So just try and keep it broad. If you're filing contracts, 1 month and, making the coffee the next month, and as long as you continue that path of, being dexterous and evolve your flexibility, you'll end up through hard work and, showing up and choosing to write your ticket, being given opportunities. If you take those opportunities, you'll learn how to grow your skills and develop. And I think that's something I believe in as a manager and as an individual. And I think you kind of have to give as much of that attention to yourself as you expect from him.
I'm always kind of curious about this because I think, especially now, at least in the US, a lot of startups are very glamorized, or startup culture and startup life is glamorized. And we see shows like Silicon Valley, we hear success stories of Uber and Facebook and all these other massive unicorns, quote unquote. And yet working for a startup is so hard. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that. So were there any moments when, you made that transition and you kind of had some big awakenings?
Yeah, you know what? There were. And, first of all, you go into startup land, I guess, with your eyes wide open, knowing that you should expect to work long hours and expect to maybe even try your hand at various skill sets once you get there. And that's where the background of being flexible has come into being useful. But I think as well, you don't realise quite how much adrenaline you're going to be operating under. I remember the first year that I joined Base 79, we did something like, there was only me and one other guy in my team at the time. We did something like 50 or 60 deals in a year. And they were all over Europe, and they involved travel, and they involved all sorts of things. And you just think, how is that even really possible? These were with big companies, not just with, individual creators, of which there were many, many of those as well. But I think you kind of end up, surviving on a lot of kind of commercial instinct, focusing on the things you need to do. Obviously, it comes from good management, having good people around you as well to collaborate with. But I think once you realise you're all in this kind of small boat that needs to set sail and grow, there's a real active interest in doing that, and you end up becoming much more powerful than the individual components as a result. It's great. It's a fantastic.
That's why we do this, right? Yeah. We're all adrenaline junkies who want to feel like we're making an impact and want to be part of building something bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And this far down the line in that experience, that experience started for me 5 years ago, and we're in a different iteration of the company now. It's brilliant seeing other smaller companies in the market pop up with niche focus or better tools or a smarter eye on certain aspects of the nature and the direction of the travel. And I just think it's always a great opportunity to jump into it. But, for anyone thinking of doing it, just get into it with your eyes open. It's going to be hard work, but it's going to be really worthwhile.
So you started in London working Base 79, sixth employee, and then made the move all the way out here to sunny Southern California. Yeah. How was that transition?
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough that we had raised some money here on the West Coast with some investors, and we needed to have an office here and build a presence. And actually, Base 79 had some experience before doing that in New York. And so my CEO was at this point not in a position to do the travelling himself, and he asked me to do it, which I was very lucky to do. That was over 2 years ago now. So, and it's been a fantastic transition. I come with wife and family, and so everyone's getting on really well. We just love California life and the great outdoors. And it's nice to not have the 9-month winter. I won't lie, for a change of scenery.
I would imagine.
But of course, you miss aspects of the UK.
What do you miss the most, other than family and?
Yeah, family and friends probably at the top. The thing that struck me was actually thinking of Europe as a whole. I lived in it all my life in London, and always thought, Italy's over there, and Spain's over there, and France is over there, and all these different subcultures and cultures, around you. You forget how small Europe really is. And once you start travelling around the States a bit, you realise that these things are all literally next door to each other, with different languages, different cultures. And actually, I have started to think of Europe as one whole thing. I think with the lessons I've learned are that you should really make the most of your time off and your life and your family, and not be afraid to go to Paris for the weekend, because that's just not really hard to do. So I think that's been really a good wake up call.
So you came out to LA working for Base 79, which was ultimately acquired by Rightster in July 2014 for about $85 million US. Mm-hmm. How did that acquisition come about, and how did you know that Rightster was a suitable strategic partner?
Well, it was interesting actually, because Rightster was a slightly different company to Base 79 in the sense that it was really building technology, and Base 79 was really a much more pure YouTube network kind of play. I mean, both companies were doing different things on different platforms and experimenting with technology a bit. But for all intents and purposes, Rightster was a competitor. And so it made sense for them to acquire Base 79, actually along with a couple of other companies that they acquired, Viral Spiral Group being the other one at the same time. There've been a couple of earlier ones as well. It made sense for them to build their business, the Rightster business in a multifaceted way across, YouTube and other platforms as well. And so now we're a year plus down the line. That integration has been really good. There's some fantastically talented people that have run businesses independently that have been acquired by Rightster, now running various parts of the business. And, it's a great team. It's a solid team with some great products, some great partners, and, a firm eye on things that we should be doing in the future.
So how do you articulate the Rightster vision today?
So, Rightster is really a multi-platform network. I'm not sure if we came up with that phrase or if it was already out there, but because Rightster already had many relationships with publishers and have done a lot of great work in world news, fashion, sport, and of course viral videos, the addition of Base 79 and its partner set, across rights management and channel management and more enterprise type clients as opposed to a pure creative play, like other MCNs tend to be. There is now, scope for us that, we're really a marketplace to connect brands with content creators large and small. And we do that sort of intelligently based on our own analysis of, the performance and of the audience and the types of content that people are trying to make, but also with understanding the supply and demand of brands are looking for in particular in multiple markets. Having 13 offices around the world, affords us the luxury that we really are truly international, truly global. And obviously I'm here in the US in a very, busy, almost market-leading, territory for our industry. But, the international piece is equally exciting. And I think, in the world of online video, we are in the global economy there. And all these next-generation media companies that are emerging are seeing that, you can experiment with audiences in real time all over the world and feed that back into the programming or the proposition that you're developing. So, I would articulate it and say, we're a kind of, a business-to-business solution for, global rights holders and people who want to attract brands and influencers into their activities.
Now, you've had an international focus for a long time, not just in the work at Rightster and Base 79, but going back to your roles at, Viacom, and et cetera, in the traditional background. What are you seeing in the international market today? What are the certain regions that you're focused on? What are the overall trends that maybe are similar to what's evolved in Western Europe and the States, and what's different? Well,
first of all, Europe is one big developed continent in the sense from an advertising perspective. So, the 5 key territories there in Europe are always very interesting to look at in terms of their individual market behaviour and how brands are interacting with content, sometimes on platforms that are only relevant to that market. So, obviously, Dailymotion came out of France, social networks like Twenty in Spain, and, obviously the broadcasters in the UK who have been pioneers at, developing on-demand and catch-up services for TV, ranging from BBC iPlayer to Channel 4's on-demand service. I would say the difference is, certainly with the US market, sometimes the prices are a lot higher from an advertising perspective, CPMs, for example. And that's, the UK, for example, that is propped up by the fact that a couple of the, broadcasters who have a service and a remit to, actually serve the British population with, a certain quality of content or a certain type of content, they have this ability to dominate the advertising industry, probably a little bit more so than other markets, maybe a little bit more so in that sense than the US, which, really has the impact that the BBC has in the UK is probably bigger than PBS has here, for example. And as a result, you have competing broadcasters who are commercial, creating expensive technologies and expensive programming that needs to yield a higher advertising CPM.
What is an average CPM in, say, the UK?
Well, I believe in the sort of digital on-demand universe, we're talking about 18 to 20 pounds.
Wow.
It's unless my market information is 2 years out of date, which it probably is. But
so roughly like $30
Okay. And of course, a large broadcaster in the US may be able to, charge 20, 25,
exactly.
But it's still disproportionately high. Mm-hmm. So, that being a trend, it's a great market to lead, a sort of short format funded, business from, and I think lots of the companies in our space in the UK and Europe sort of benefit further afield in Asia and other parts of the world that are less developed from an advertising perspective, I think you're starting to see, the same sorts of trends that are happening here in the US, people gravitating towards influencer marketing and branded content. You're seeing that stuff happening at the same time for the same objectives, which are obviously to help, program makers connect with audiences or tap into, the social influence of some of these creators around their shows or their broadcast outlets. It's a new way of thinking from every marketer's perspective. But, in a market, say like India, for example, which is probably traditionally underserved and underdeveloped from a core TV advertising perspective, it now has this ability to do branded content in a way that it can compete with, or certainly be competitive on price with lots of other markets in APAC or Europe. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of creating this global opportunity.
Sure. India is an interesting one because on the one hand, it's the largest potential YouTube market, given that China's out of the equation with their Google products. Mm-hmm. It's also interesting in the fact that it's a mobile-first viewing experience, mm-hmm. and ad formats are less mature on mobile than they are on, say, display. And so we're seeing lower CPMs or lower advertiser interest in mobile units. But I think that will shift. I think we're continuing to see that.
You are seeing the same levels of engagement, mm-hmm. And you're right. Lots of I remember years ago talking to some of my friends who joined Google, saying some of the emerging markets for them were Africa and certain parts of Asia that were not well served by broadband and sort of propensity there to get onto online in the traditional sense. They were seeing their first YouTube videos on mobile because that was the way to do it, and that the networks were able to sustain that. Now that we're in not all of these markets have 3G, but now we're in an environment where we're actually looking beyond where we were a few years ago with 3G. There's every possibility with the advent of platforms like Twitter and Facebook and others into short form video that these mobile advertising products will exist and will exist at scale in these markets. So I think the next few years will be very exciting.
Have you been following the activity in the MCN space in India recently? For instance, Nirvana Digital's acquisition by LA-based Zealot Networks.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, that's new. It's very recent. This week. Yoboho with Broadband TV.
Yep, that's new about that
Culture Machines raise more money. Ping Digital's raising money.
Fantastic.
QKey partnership with Fullscreen. So it seems like India in particular is a hotbed of video activity right now.
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm fortunate that my boss actually runs our international business and he's based in Singapore. He used to run YouTube's content partnerships team in Australia, and I'm pretty fortunate that he's looking after all those markets because there's a huge amount of activity there in Southeast Asia and Japan at the moment. So
absolutely,
it's a busy place.
And Singapore's always surprised me because you would expect it to be, it's very westernized, and you would expect a lot more advertiser activity there, even though it's a small population. But still, a lot of the buying seems like it's done out of Hong Kong or out of Tokyo. I think that will shift as Singapore's become a hub for banking and shipping and other kind of commercial activity in Southeast Asia. I think it stands to have an opportunity to be a leader in digital video and new media as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a number of things down in Asia that I think are interesting. First of all, everything that the telecoms have done in Southeast Asia, and then the leading work that was done in markets like Korea for, very early adoption of 3G video, when actually the rest of us were still looking at, images and sending texts. They were leading the way with mobile TV for many years. Combined with the fact that, as you said, Singapore and Hong Kong are these fantastic areas of multi-market deals for advertising and for distribution. So I think, what we're seeing in terms of multi-territory briefs and campaigns being driven out of London for Europe and actually sometimes increasingly New York, I think we'll see a lot more of that coming out of Central Asia.
What does the future hold for Rightster?
Rightster is actually, we just announced today some fantastic growth results for the first half of 2015.
Congratulations.
Which we're very pleased about. And we are anticipating, similar levels of growth going forward. The thing that makes our job very exciting right now is that we have a number of interesting products in the pipeline for our existing partners and for other people in the market, ranging from better and enhanced ways of working on YouTube and Facebook and understanding your audiences and your programming and how to best program for your audience, to building on the strength that Rightster already has with its publisher network and creating some really smart tools and services there. So, I'm excited that, we're going to be working, coming from the basic design side of the business, where we were working, almost wholly on YouTube with a lot of our partners. I'm excited that a lot of our partnerships are now expanding into multi-platform, multi-territory deals, and, we're going to continue to build on that.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of those key platforms that are important to Rightster?
Well, no one can ignore Facebook
of course,
and the video revolution that's happening there. Although, it is fascinating, when people say, I'm doing 1 million views on YouTube, but I'm doing 4 million views on Facebook. And of course, once you dig in and you understand that 3 seconds is a view on Facebook, it's a whole different, ballgame. But there's no question of the size of that audience on that platform and the engagement of it. I was joking with my wife the other day, who probably only watches a couple of YouTube videos a week, that she watches about 10 a day on Facebook in her newsfeed. I think the fact that the kind of they're auto rolling with the sound off is not actually such a bad thing. It's not when that first started happening. I think people were looking at Facebook as a platform and saying, "Oh, it's kind of like going back to the early days of publisher distribution and syndication, and the CPMs are very low." But I think what's exciting is that Facebook is going to use, or is using, video as a way to drive conversation that's not just limited to a TV ad. And so, my own view on this is that actually they've been looking very eagerly at what's been happening at YouTube over the last 10 years and said, well, that's a nice evolution of the TV business in an online environment for short-form video, but actually, it's maybe not about porting TV revenues to digital. It's more about, creating a deeper and richer experience for the consumer first on mobile, potentially as a focus, and also with a sort of closer eye on return on investment for that marketeer and the product you're selling. So I think what they're doing with Messenger as a platform, for e-commerce and email is actually going to be just as interesting as some of the activities that are going on with video.
Mm-hmm. Outside of Facebook, anything else you're keeping your eye on?
Well, of course, every market has its own interesting opportunities for us from a licensing perspective, be it, local TV services who want to license, viral video clips, to, local on-demand services. Everyone's very interested in what Snapchat is doing, Twitter with its native video play as well. But, I would say anything that's kind of short or long form, there's an increasing amount of interesting evolution going on with the business models and innovative ways to do that. Of course, Snapchat's most recent announcement about premium replays is very interesting there. So I think we just, on behalf of our partners, need to be thinking very proactively in all of these environments and making sure that the right partners are in the right environments, monetizing in the right way. But, as digital people, I think we have a role to play in innovating as well and thinking about how engagement works, how audiences should be measured, helping a lot of our brand partners think that through and do research, on the fly. So, yeah, I'm excited about the next phase.
Very cool. So shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about Ben Lister outside the office. You've done a lot of philanthropy, and you've mentored digital media and tech startups in the past with Bethnal Green Ventures.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that work.
So this is a group in London, in East London, Bethnal Green. They fund some very cool ideas. And, I basically offer to mentor some of the entrepreneurs that, possibly, attacking some of the areas that I have experience in for the first time. So, a great example of that would be a group who came up with a very innovative use for aggregating heartbeat data and were looking at filming some of their activities. And then they had a broadcast partner that was interested, but they'd never done a deal with a broadcaster before. I didn't know how to distribute video. So, without giving away the family secrets, it was very easy to help those guys navigate through some of the pitfalls of how they could develop that piece of their business without, losing any kind of long-term ownership of anything they were doing, etc. And in all honesty, just, having been in large organisations doing a digital function, I've had, hundreds of pitches over the years and I've seen, some really great ideas that, I didn't back, and I should have done, fly, and, other things happen that, you do predict. So, after a while, you get into a rhythm of actually being able to spot these things and think around the edges of an idea. So it's just nice to, be able to pass on some of the benefit of your experience and knowledge to people who, have got a very strong and solid idea and are moving in one direction. But you want to make sure that people don't, talk themselves into a corner or develop themselves into an area that they could have avoided some of the pitfalls.
Great. And in addition to advising some of these startups, you love to surf, spin vinyl.
Well, I've only been surfing since I arrived in California. But,
there's no great surf in London?
Of course, you have the southwest of England, Cornwall and everything.
There we go.
I have definitely tried it before coming here, but not to the extent of being here. But no, I have to say, my interests outside of work, I love to surf. I mean, I'll say it for, I have twins, so I spend most of my waking hours outside of work with my kids, trying to get the homework done and make sure we're all living a healthy life. But I love surfing. I think every day that starts with an early morning surf is a good day. You clear your head. You're doing some exercise. It's just a fantastic place to be in the ocean. I went through a period of having like stingray fear, and there's all the hammerhead sharks that are being seen right now. And the weird thing is, I feel a draw to just get out there in the ocean. I love to go with people, obviously. I think if I went on my own and got eaten by a shark, that'd be awful. If you're going out with locals who've been to these spots, every week for the last 20 years, then you're in pretty good company. So I love doing that. And like you said, the vinyl records thing has become a bit of an obsession for me lately. A couple of buddies of mine are putting on events, every month in Los Angeles, just getting like-minded people together to come and spin records. It's actually called Vinyl Night, and it's just not a commercial idea at all, really. It's much more one for getting your friends who want to DJ and have got a few records to come by. And actually what we do is we try and get the people with the oldest records to go first. So if you're playing rock from the 50s and 60s, then you go on early. And if you're playing electronic music from this year, then you go on last. Because that tends to work quite well with the flow of an evening. As the drinks flow, you want to get the music to sound a little bit more like a rave at the end of the night. But yeah, the one thing that's fallen out the back of that, actually through one of our partners, I'm doing a show every week on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock on Dash Radio with a buddy of mine. And we've got to the point where we're now interviewing some of the musicians that we're playing, which is really good fun. We have some fantastic guests lined up for the next few weeks of that. And it's a creative outlet that I didn't actually expect to sort of be in. Actually, it's always good to have these things outside of work. I play in a band as well, kind of stuff. But
what do you play in the band?
So I'm in a dad band. I play the guitar. It's brilliant actually because pretty much everyone else in the band is American and has this heritage of fantastic songs by Neil Young and the Grateful Dead and all this kind of stuff, which is exactly what I wanted to get the band playing. And yet when I come along, they go, let's play Kinks songs and Rolling Stones songs and Beatles songs. I'm like, no, I used to do that in England. So it's really interesting. I think it's important to have a life outside of work as well as try and do a really good job in work.
Absolutely.
I think if you can do those two things well, then you're into a winning formula.
Great. What is the name of your radio program on Dash Radio?
It's #Vinyl Night. This started, as I say, in living rooms, just as a sort of almost a bit like a book club. People getting together and just saying, "Oh, I've got this really random record that I think we should all hear." And it's everything from reggae to dub to funky jazz to electronic music. We just created a radio show through a conversation with the guy, with DJ Ski and those guys. We just didn't think there was enough vinyl on radio, and he was like, "Well, I've got these decks and no one uses them, so come by and do a vinyl-only radio show." I'm actually really pleased that these things are popping up more and more. There seems to be a bit of a resurgence in it now that the ubiquity of music streaming services is there. The industry's pushing on 100 million global paying music subscribers, and I think in that world, discovery is a really important part of the conversation. Sharing stories behind the music, why you're into certain things, sharing that with your friends. Having some of the musicians and the producers and the people that were involved in these fabulous, pieces of art tell you about, what was inspiring them at the time. I think is probably one of the most important things to be celebrated right now as we think about the next generation of music fans and giving those guys some icons and to be inspired by.
Awesome. Let's get into some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Let's talk about your greatest failure and what did you learn from it?
You have to give me a moment.
Yeah, it's a tough question. Take your time.
So being part of the music industry when they didn't adopt the Napster model, this was an interesting, I can't claim that was entirely down to me, of course, but I'm going to take it as my greatest failure. I was a very young guy in my first job, and the music industry was, suing Napster for copyright infringement or hosting the files on the servers. And of course, it was fantastically popular. It was linking its computers over the emerging internet and bandwidth that was available at the time in order to share and discover music. And actually, there was nothing wrong with that from a music consumption perspective. If you think now that Spotify and Apple Music and RDO and Pandora and all these other wonderful services that exist are completely legal, they're pushing music streaming across high quality bandwidth. It's actually quite hard to know how to connect or what to listen to. in a world where you've got every song in the world on your phone, how do you actually connect with that? And I think there was a community element to Napster, that people were actually were recommending things to each other, and things were available for periods of time and then not. And obviously, it was completely illegal and it was shut down. But I think at the time, it was an innovation led through technology of consumer behaviour, that the consumer behaviour piece was not adopted or acknowledged as being an important component. Copyright holders were sort of, see the always in the room looking at the actual facts of the infringements that were taking place. So I think that was a real shame in many respects. And P2P networking has actually started to be a lot more embraced than by other companies who are broadcasters looking to market things now. It's very interesting, but I think that set the music industry back a few years at that point in time. Right now, they're trying to. They will be looking for new ways to innovate around how music is discovered. So that's something I feel pretty strongly.
What books have you read recently that you couldn't put down?
Well, I'm always reading a music book or two. I'm reading a book right now which was lent to me by a friend, called Into the Sun, which is a really deep dive on certain aspects of LA music culture, ranging for everything from the Sunset Strip and the clubs to big LA music scenes from Laurel Canyon through to the punk new wave scene, to everything that happened around hip hop and sort of the kind of response to grunge as well. So I'm fascinated by that. I tend to read bits of books and kind of tear them apart, as opposed to read novels from beginning to end. Although I have to say my favourite book of all time is probably Catcher in the Rye, which is just a fantastic story.
Great book.
I can repeatedly read that one, and I can't wait to read it to my kids. They're probably a couple of years away from that. It's a never-ending, fantastic book. Let's see. I was also reading. I picked up and started to read The Road to Los Angeles by John Fante, which is a road book. I have to say I haven't finished it yet. I'm still 2 years in to my Los Angeles experience this time. But yeah, far too many press articles to read and reports. But I do enjoy read, and I have to say I do it in the traditional sense. I read a book, not an iPad.
And why do you choose that?
Well, do you know what? It's the reflection of the screen. I'm not a Kindle person. I should probably give that one a go, but
you spend every other waking hour probably in front of the screen.
I spend far too much time in front of the screen, and it's nice to actually, sit down at the weekend. I am actually one of those probably far too traditional people. I like to read the newspaper. I like to, that was always a big thing for me back in the UK with the Sunday papers and breakfast with the family. And, that's one of the most sort of precious times of the week. These days, of course, I'm just listening to my latest haul of vinyl and thumbing through a few press articles. But I do like to read the proper book. It's nice to take them on holiday and get lost in someone else's books for a while.
What's coming next in either the online video or the music space? Do you have perspective on both?
Sure. Well, I think the online video business is going through some fascinating transitions right now, some fascinating changes, not just from a platform perspective and everyone else launching native video services, content owners, large and small, finding new ways to grow their audiences and their businesses. I think we're in a golden era for TV, creatively, as well as being able to watch TV at any particular time you want to. I love the Netflix model of publishing all episodes at once and then just munching your way through them. So I think that what's happening in online video, certainly from my perspective, is that influencers are becoming more and more professional. There was a period of time over the last few years where the price either had to be right or the idea had to be right, or probably both. And actually, what we're now seeing, I think, is the growing up of some of these influencers and some of these influencer verticals, where original programming and curation of original programming and content, old and new, is going to be really exciting. So I think we're going to see the likes of Amazon, the likes of Apple entering the TV space, whether directly or indirectly, and I think we'll see a lot of emphasis on how these new stars are going to lead crossover into original programming on our bigger screens. So I expect that to continue. In the music space, actually, I think they're probably just going to continue to push for widespread adoption of music streaming services. It's a kind of bread and butter moment, I think, for the industry. They need a lot of hundreds of millions of users of those services really to kind of continue to grow the revenues of the whole industry. And so hopefully for things like Vinyl Night and for other people that care about music discovery, there is an opportunity to have curation, crowdsourced curation, become part of that conversation. We've seen it for many years actually on YouTube. It was always spoken about that if you were a successful creator, you were actually very good at managing a two-way dialogue with your audience. It wasn't just a single broadcast. And I think, not just music actually, but other forms of entertainment as well have to maintain two-way conversation with their audience. Being able, commenting you should be able to be heard, and you should be able to be not necessarily responded to on an individual basis, but if enough people make a point, then that's a point that the program makers probably have a responsibility to take on board. So, I think with all of that, you'll end up with far more authentic and shareable moments in video and in music, actually. So, long may that continue.
Who wins the music streaming war? Is it YouTube, Music Key? Is it Spotify, Apple Music? What do you see there?
Well, if history is going to teach us anything here, it's that Apple will always maybe innovate a little slower than others, but come to market with probably one of the better services. I have to say, I jumped in with both feet to Apple Music. I almost, I was a Spotify user, and I used some of the other services before, but I actually waited until Apple Music launched to become like a premium user, and then I bought the watch the same week, and I've actually immersed myself in that, and I think it's a pretty good experience. It was definitely a bit buggy up until the recent iOS updates, and they fixed a lot of the problems. It was very difficult to discover an album at one point when it first launched, but I think the radio thing is very interesting. The Beats radio service. It's almost like in a world where freemium is potentially disappearing a little bit, and that's been widely written about. The free aspects of some of these services haven't helped the conversion into pay. I actually think the need for radio and broadcast and curation becomes even more apparent. So I'm particularly excited to see how things like Beats develop and the audiences for that kind of thing grow. There's definitely a market for people that just want to sit back and hear great music being played by DJs. So yeah, I'm excited to see how that goes. In terms of putting a prediction on it, I think Spotify has to get acquired by somebody else.
Why is that?
Well, because they have a lot of great billing relationships. Millions of billing relationships. And I think, there are probably some of the larger companies out there who really, cherish that right now, and as they continue to grow their services. You can't dispute the fact that YouTube is a platform for music discovery like no other, just because of its association with all forms of content and how music runs throughout its DNA. So I think that you can always, bet that YouTube will continue to grow its presence. But I do think, maybe I'm just an Apple aficionado or a fanboy or whatever, but I think Apple will probably convert the most paying subscribers eventually. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Apple TV services and what the bells and whistles are going to be around that. Because, that will be, I think it will open up the world for, developers and people that want to reach an audience via the Apple ecosystem. Maybe even like YouTube did. But of course, it's easier to broadcast yourself on YouTube than it is to create an app, do it yourself through Apple. So I think we'll probably end up with a quality rising to the top node.
If you were starting a business in the online video space today, what would you do?
Well, I have to say this because I do feel very passionate about this, but I think the data and the understanding performance data and understanding how audiences behave and what they want, what works and what doesn't, is still some of the most underserved components of online video. I mean, there are lots of fantastic companies in this space, from the very large MCNs with all the creators to the very niche ones focused on certain, genres or certain types of thing. And brands are funding a lot of the development, funding a lot of the content that's coming to market. And brands care about organic reach, and they care about views, and they care about conversion to, follow and subscribe on their channels across social media. But I don't think that's enough. I'm an advocate for knowing a little bit more about what's going on with the audience and why they behave in a certain way. We have a lot of partners that have multiple strands of content. Some of them are uploading many videos a day. And in those instances, I think it's our job to, do a good job of saying what's working, what's not, understanding the analytics, not just beyond, way beyond subscriber and viewing growth and obviously revenues, but, in a far more granular way. I think we should become the statisticians now for the next generation of media companies and have data inform a lot more of what goes on. I mean, in every media business, you can't replace the A&R guys' ears, and you can't replace what the commissioners think is going to be is going to work. And actually, for the most part, those things work really well. But I think there is still a missing component of understanding the data better. So I'll be very interested to watch any kind of emerging startups that are data-driven and care about actually taking that data and converting it into real practical advice for the creators.
Very cool. What recommendations do you have for people listening? Whether it's personal, professional, just maybe some keywords of advice.
Well, if anyone's listening who is in the start or the first decade of their career, I would say, you've really got to keep your head down, work hard, focus on lots of different things, do things inside and outside of work that are going to help create a healthy balance for you, going forward. Because, there's nothing worse than seeing a CEO that doesn't have time to play with his kids. And there's nothing worse than seeing employees of any business who haven't learned some commercial discipline or even ways to sort of creatively think or influence some of the decisions that need to be made. So I think keep yourself broad in terms of skill set. I do believe that some people have this natural ability to sell, and other people have this natural ability to analyse. And I don't think you can easily be characterised just based on your character in early on in your teens or 20s. I think you can develop those things. Some of the best salespeople I know in the world are very methodical and kind of door-to-door salesman types. They're just, they're very diligent. They're thinking about things incredibly well. And I think, you can develop yourself into a number of different areas if you want to. So in the early days, keep it broad. Don't back yourself into a corner or give yourself a label that you don't need. And always keep your eyes on the next opportunity because, it's thinking one step ahead of everybody else that, if you've got that 3 or 6 month head start on an idea and you actually start taking it to market, that's when it can make all the difference to, you personally and to people's consumption and behaviour for a better world. And I think, that's really what we're all striving for.
Absolutely. Where can people find more about you?
Well, you can find more about Rightster at rightster.com, and we have an area on that website where you can see our all of our office details, and I look after a team in LA and in New York. You can find more about Vinyl Night on Facebook under Vinyl Night LA. We have lots of followers there checking out the next events and the radio shows and all that stuff. And if you're interested in just connecting, you can just search for me on LinkedIn. I'm always available for a chat.
Great. And check out the radio show.
Yeah, the radio
Make
show.
sure you tune in.
Tuesdays at 5 o'clock on Dash Radio and replayed all over the weekend. So the best thing to do is follow us on Facebook and we'll just prompt everyone when new stuff's available.
Perfect. Well, this was so much fun and really incredible insight. Ben, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, James. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for tuning in. I'm James Creech, and this has been another episode of All Things Video.